Amazon gets the tick of approval to kick off Project Kuiper, their answer to SpaceX's Starlink. It's today's Talkin' Science Story of the Week. I'm Matt Miller, and this is day 7 of August 2020. Can you help us help them? bit.ly/TZ Guide Dogs.
With the latest science and space news 5 days a week across Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts and YouTube. This is Talkin' Science with Dr. Brad Tucker and Matt Miller.
And Brad, finally this week, the FCC in America has approved Amazon's plan, Project Kuiper they're calling it. It's their plan to compete with SpaceX's Starlink.
Yeah, we've talked about even with Starlink that, or OneWeb, that there was more companies coming online, and Amazon was looking at one of them. They've just been waiting on their approvals from the FCC and the Federal Communication Group in the U.S. that regulates communications both on the ground and in space with satellites. And they just got the tick of approval to launch it. Now, there's a few other things they have to get approval for, but it just moved that project to the forefront. So now you really have 3 different companies now building their own satellite constellations to provide global internet. So the race is really heating up.
It absolutely is. And OneWeb has had some troubles in the last few months. They're sort of in limbo at the moment, waiting for some new donors if they come along. But SpaceX is launching those satellites every other week, it seems, with hundreds of them up there now. And part of Amazon's license is to launch half of the constellation by 2026 and the rest by 2029. So expediting this plan and really getting these satellites up into orbit and creating healthy competition, I think, for global satellite internet.
Yeah, look, as you said, the race is really heating up. OneWeb has a bit of financial trouble, as you said. They do have a buyer. It's just trying to figure out what that looks like. Obviously, SpaceX, they're not going to slow down. The finance is there. And then we look at Kuiper, Amazon's project. Amazon, which is essentially Jeff Bezos, has invested $10 billion. So, really putting his money where he thinks it should be. And just like with SpaceX, going to make a success. And when we look at the competition, between SpaceX and Amazon to some degree, right, or Blue Origin, which is kind of what it is, essentially Elon Musk versus Jeff Bezos, they are really trying to carve out similar niches in space with competition, but doing it with their own bit of personal style, slightly different company names, which is great, and also making it and putting the investment there to make it work. It just shows that if you're investing $10 billion over the next decade roughly, you clearly think there's a lot of money here, right? You don't just throw down $10 billion because you're like, all right, that sounds fun, and that's
I didn't need that.
Yeah, that's the scale when we're talking about here is what this means, that if you're going to be building billions of dollars in infrastructure, you clearly think not only is this going to work, but the customer base and the revenue is going to be so huge that it's worth that investment. And if you just do the simple math, right? So, you pay, say, $50 for an internet plan. So if you imagine even $50 times 300 million people in the US, that's, $1.5 billion per month.
It's staggering.
Yes, okay, not everyone in the US would do it, but the money's there. And then you extrapolate to the whole world. Clearly, they're expecting that there will be a good return on an investment and that the competition will be needed. So it's all about good, reliable infrastructure. Just as every mobile phone company on the ground says, we have the best coverage and the best network, it's going to be the same arguments in space. We have the best reliability, the best coverage, and the best download speeds.
And Amazon really has a leg up here on SpaceX. And OneWeb especially, OneWeb not having their own launch platform. They have to use Soyuz rockets. SpaceX obviously has Falcon. Amazon or Project Kuiper has Blue Origin. But the other big thing with Amazon's project is that they have the Amazon Web Services, and they have ground stations, 12 ground stations I think it is, around the world already. So they have that capability to bring down the satellite information immediately as soon as these satellites launch. Not only that, they also have quite a lot of infrastructure backboning the internet already. If it wasn't for AWS, half the internet wouldn't exist. And I know for a fact that some television stations out there in the world now broadcasting over the cloud or using the cloud to actually broadcast podcast wouldn't exist. A lot of things wouldn't exist. A lot of stuff is moving to cloud-based computing, and Amazon is right there with all of that sort of stuff. So Project Kuiper, it really is quite. It's leapt ahead now with this approval, even though it's behind SpaceX. It's quite a way ahead.
That is a very good point. When you start looking at all these different services, just click on a web link and you'll see that ultimately it redirects to the page that you go to. But before it redirects, it's AWS. As you said, there's a huge amount of hosting done by Amazon Web Services, which, people don't appreciate of just how big of a service that is. And because of that, they've already had to build a lot of that other ground infrastructure that has to come with these projects, and they already have that in place and they're already growing it. So as you said, they all have their different niches, and so it clearly makes sense with Amazon. Obviously, as we've talked a lot about, one of the big worries from the astronomy standpoint is the interference with space and the blocking of skies. So what is the impact on astronomy, but also with all those satellites, what is the impact, how reliable, how safe they are, so we don't get catastrophic chain reactions where there's too much junk in space. So all of those are quite big and important worries we have to think about. It'll be also interesting to see how Amazon addresses these things, or Kuiper addresses these things. And this is one of the big things that will remain to be seen. SpaceX has been actively trying to address it, which is great with Starlink. OneWeb hasn't really said anything. It'll be interesting to see what Amazon's policy is. Are they going to work with the communities to resolve these issues to make sure everyone wins, or are they just going to turn their head in the sand? Because that will also turn the tide of opinion, which will be a big thing here, right? Companies will want customers to like them, so they buy their plans. You don't want to piss off a huge group of people.
I was actually going to say the one group of people you don't want to piss off are astronomers, because they have big, bulky telescopes that they could easily convert into rocket launchers. Maybe.
That's exactly right. We could be effective in our looking at things, let's say.
Well, 3,236 satellites from Amazon, not quite as many as SpaceX. I think it's a tenth of SpaceX's capability, if I'm getting that right from my memory, but still quite a significant amount, as we've talked about with SpaceX and those constellations, and seeing them disrupt astronomical viewing. So a wait and see approach on that question, but hopefully a question that Jeff or Project Kuiper is going to answer really soon.
I mean, and I assume they will, but even if it's less satellites, that's just a different configuration that all makes sense. But again, you do hope that they work with the community. And yes, part of that is you have to first get approval to even start planning the mission before you can work with the other communities. So, it kind of does make sense. There's no point of discussing the other things if they're not even getting approval to actually proceed with the project. So now that happened, hopefully they start from the beginning to work with it. And as you said, given the close relationship with Amazon and a lot of these other companies, including in the astronomy world, with cloud computing, you hope that discussions will happen early.
Absolutely, Brad. All right, well, our next episode, number 430, we're going to wrap everything up from this week and produce it live in Talkin' Science Uncut. We'll catch you then.